Thank you for joining me today and namaste. What we're going to be talking about in this program is what I consider probably the blueprint for all magic, and that, of course, is Aladdin. Why is Aladdin the blueprint for all magic? I understand that most people, when they see or think of Aladdin, they have this impression of the vapid Disney movie. However, if one has read the book, it takes on an entirely different persona. For example, let's look at the very deeper aspects of Aladdin. Now, Aladdin starts off his life and he is outside of family expectations. He's tuned out of them. He's tuned out of the expectations, and he's tuned out of the cultural roles and the social labels. It's very easy to say this. It really is incredibly easy to say. Most people never do it, especially for the time it was written. The time it was written, it was taken for granted. If your father was a cobbler, then you would be a cobbler. If your father was a blacksmith, you would be a blacksmith. If your mother was a homemaker, you would be a homemaker. Now, we don't necessarily have that same solid structure that we had in the Middle Ages when Aladdin was written. But in many ways, we have massive social conformity. We can see that during such things as COVID, and we can see it in wars where people will conform and support one side of the other. However, this is not the mind of the magician. The mind of the magician is as Aladdin. He is outside of this world. He's not connected with this world. In the book, they describe him as lazy. Interestingly, within Kabbalic foundation, laziness is seen as detachment from the mundane. So what do we learn from Aladdin? Well, obviously, Aladdin is incredibly powerful. He reflects Crowley's love and will. So despite the fact that his father, according to the story, dies of a broken heart because his son will not conform, he still doesn't bend. He really has the will under love, or love under will. So how does this happen? Because realistically, the mind is incredibly malleable. It absorbs everything like a sponge. Gurdjieff spoke about this. He said, the world is only real when I am. So, but how do we get this real mind? The real mind certainly is not one of conformity. It does not conform. The magician's mind understands what it wants, and it will go through any amount of challenges and suffering to get its objective. As in the case of Aladdin. The interesting thing is that he's also hooked into an illusion. If we look at Aladdin, he is loafing. He's with his friends. He's not going to school. He's not doing anything that you would imagine that you should do to be successful. But the point being is, Aladdin's illusion, Aladdin's what he understands he wants. He wants to be a prince, a king. He wants to be married to a princess, but he's throwing stones with his friends in some alleyway. He's about as far away from royalty as is it possible to get. But in there, under love, under will, is this illusion of what he wants. Now, you might think, well, this is absurd, but it's not, because reality is seldom yours. Usually it's something you've seen on television, it's something you've read about, it's a friend that you admire, it's maybe something that you've absorbed on a subconscious level. But generally speaking, all of our realities are borrowed or imprinted, if you wish. The magician doesn't have this problem. His reality is his reality. I'm using his in the generic term. I also mean the female is also part of this reality. I mean, seriously, the true magic is the female deciding that it will have a child. Because to have this child, you have to give up so much to bring this child into being. Maybe a lot of people don't think about this, but I think on a subconscious level, you do. Because I think it's impossible to bring a child into gestation and understand that it's not going to demand some kind of sacrifice. So, if you wish, the true transformation is the knowing of the self. Ironically, Aladdin knows himself. He is not detached or attached. He just is. If you like, he's really, in a very strange way, the ultimate Shiva archetype. And this brings lots of things into focus, because after his father's death, this can be seen as very, very kind of Oedipus. So we have to bear that in mind. Remember, it is a story, it is allegorical. However, it's a story that has stood the test of time. And not only has it stood the test of time, it's almost magical how it was created. When Galland did 2001 Nights, the story of Aladdin was introduced to him, because Aladdin essentially is a tale that is set in China. Now, apparently during this time, the Arabs used to say anything that was far away was China. However, we have the very real possibility, because of the Silk Road, that China or parts of China did adopt the Muslim religion. And of course, part of the Muslim religion is the jinn, hence the genie of the lamp, hence the genie of the ring. So we really have to understand that sort of on one level, it looks like it's some kind of superficial allegorical story. On the other level, it truly is a grimoire, a grimoire. So we have to understand this, and that's why we have to learn from it. But the most important thing about Aladdin is, if you wish, his higher self, his understanding of who he is. If you like, there's a little bit of Descartes in there. Yeah, it's strange to think of that, but yes, there is a little bit of Descartes. I think, therefore I am. And This also is a recurring theme in Aladdin. I also believe that a lot of Aladdin has been played around with because they use the word open sesame. We'll come to this later. I think it's highly unlikely it was open sesame. I think it's more credible that it was the word abracadabra. But that, my friends, is for next time. Thank you for tuning in, and namaste.